Greetings everyone, Dr. Mendes here, briefly going over IDEA versus Section 504. First and foremost, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Act, this is referring to special education, special ed regulations, processes, policies, law that's all governed by educational law. In order for a child or student to qualify for special education services, they have to fall or be categorized under one of the 13 disabilities, at least one of the 13 disabilities. With this process, the student has to go through a non-discriminatory assessment, which is done by a multidisciplinary committee. It's a team. Certainly parents, caregivers, guardians are critical participants in this team and any decision-making process. And with that, they have to go through an eligibility review and determination. So the data that's collected from this non-discriminatory evaluation, the team looks at, closely scrutinizes, analyzes this data, and they determine if the child does in fact qualify for special ed services under at least one of those 13 disabilities. If the child does qualify, then the team is going to create an individualized education plan, which is going to outline the services, supports, any programming that the student needs in the school setting. With that, we're always looking at the free and appropriate public education. We're always offering FAPE, which should be highly personalized, highly individualized, based on the student needs and present levels of performance. And when we're looking at least restrictive environment, that's about the placement of the student, looking at their needs, looking at levels of performance, and figuring out where we can best place the student to maximize their potential academically, socially, emotionally, whether it's a gen ed classroom, a resource, a separate classroom, separate school, even a hospital-bound or home-bound services as well. Where Section 504 is slightly different. This is a civil rights law. It was first created to prevent discrimination. The terms for eligibility are a little broader, and that you see that key term adversely impacting major life functions. And with that, often these students or children, they have some sort of medical diagnosis, ADHD, seizure disorders, diabetes, asthma, allergies. Of course, the list continues to develop as well. But these students, they are not receiving special education services. And just because these students or children have a diagnosis, that does not mean they automatically qualify for special ed services. So therefore, the student may qualify for Section 504 plan, and the team still has to come together. There's a Section 504 team that helps and goes through the evaluation process and helps determine eligibility based on the data, and one of those pieces may be a medical diagnosis. And then with that, the team is going to create an appropriate educational plan. This is not an IEP. It is nowhere near as intensive as an individualized education plan. Often has accommodations built into it in order to foster student success. And with that, the placement is typically in the general education classroom. We're not looking at a continuum of placement options like the least restrictive environment with an IEP that's governed by IDEA. But students are in the gen ed setting, often with accommodations to meet their needs and with possible health and related services as well. And of course, that is highly individualized and depends on the student's needs. This concludes a bit of a comparison between IDEA and Section 504.